If you've watched this video,
the United States doesn't seem to care. Why are shady companies, influencer campaigns, and targeted advertisements selling Americans things to put in their body that aren't what they say they are?
you have to watch this one because the phenomenon that Johnny Harris is describing is not new at all. And these lawsuits, they prove it. Let's break down 5 of the biggest lawsuits that came from unregulated products causing sickness and even death in Americans just like you and me. We'll begin with a classic. Bullock versus Philip Morris. Now, not Sandra Bullock, Betty Bullock. Betty was a 64-year-old woman with inoperable lung cancer who sued Philip Morris, the tobacco giant, for negligence, strict product liability, and fraud. Bullock claimed that her tobacco addiction and subsequent illness were the result of Philip Morris's failure to warn her and other consumers of the risks that came from smoking. At trial, the jury found that the plaintiff showed evidence that Philip Morris did know that tobacco smoke caused lung cancer, and that they intentionally got rid of research that showed the negative health impacts of tobacco use. Due to this evidence, Bullock was awarded $28 billion in punitive damages and $850,000 in compensatory damages. Now, her punitive damages were later reduced to $28 million after a 9-year appeal battle. But Betty Bullock didn't enjoy a penny of that, seeing as she passed away in 2003. The tobacco industry didn't become regulated by the FDA until 7 years after the verdict in the Bullock case. I actually can't believe that's true. Now, the next lawsuit wasn't featured in as many headlines, but it did have a $6.8 million price tag attached to it for Johnson & Johnson after they were sued and lost to a man taking Risperdal. Now, for those of you not familiar with this medication, Risperdal is an antipsychotic agent often used to treat schizophrenia, episodes related to bipolar disorder, and irritability associated with autism. And it also allegedly causes gynecomastia, the noticeable increase in breast tissue in thousands of men. But that fact was kept on the DL according to lawsuits filed against Johnson & Johnson. And now, you're typing in the comments, but Josh, that's a drug. It must have been approved by the FDA. It must have been regulated. Stop with your comments. Actually, I'm kidding. Comments are great for the algorithm. Just pound away, pound away. But here's the deal, and this is so crazy. It was regulated by the FDA. Risperdal was first approved by the FDA in 1993, and these lawsuits were filed in the 2000s. But FDA approval is not what you think it is. The FDA does its testing, and I'm not trying to say that FDA approval is not valuable. I mean, it definitely has some value. However, it's not the end-all, be-all. For sure, for a couple of reasons, but the main reason, at least relevant to this lawsuit and dozens just like it related to other drugs, is that the manufacturers have or they later acquire information about adverse consequences, information that they will actively hide from the FDA. Ultimately, keeping products on the market can just become a business decision for some companies, notwithstanding the human wreckage and the lost lives. I mean, as long as they are netting a profit. And the nightmares really aren't over for Johnson & Johnson or its customers because they're also the defendant in thousands of lawsuits concerning their transvaginal mesh, used specifically to treat pelvic organ prolapse. These lawsuits allege that the companies who produced the mesh intentionally misled the FDA. See, that's what I was talking about. And patients about the safety and effectiveness of the products after many patients experienced damage to their vaginal walls and internal organs, and infection, pain, urinary problems, and more. And while many of these lawsuits are still in litigation, the New York Times predicts that settlements and verdicts in these cases have had or will have in total an accumulated award of close to $8 billion. The first transvaginal mesh device was cleared by the FDA all the way back in 1996, and it took until about 2011 for the first communication about complications with the mesh to be issued. As it stands right now, the transvaginal mesh for pelvic organ prolapse has been banned from being produced or sold in the United States. It was on the market for 15 years before the public was aware of the data, which is now so horrifying that the product can't even be made or sold here. Now, a more recent lawsuit concerning an insufficiently regulated dangerous product are the hair relaxer lawsuits that have even attracted the attention of nationally acclaimed civil rights and personal injury attorney Ben Crump, seen here looking like Ben Crump. I mean, microphones sold separately. The thousands of lawsuits filed against manufacturers and distributors of hair relaxer products claim that there are links between the dangerous chemicals in the products, namely formaldehyde, and uterine cancer, breast cancer, endometrial cancer, and other serious health health problems in women. These claims have been substantiated by studies like the one done by the National Institute of Health's National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. Now, they need to do some rebranding with that name, but they found that the frequent users of chemical hair relaxers were more than twice as likely to develop uterine cancer. These lawsuits have not been settled yet, and they've not been a trial, but estimates range from $300,000 on the low end to over $1 million per case in damages, meaning that the makers of these products are going to be out over $1 billion if the companies survive. It would be fair if the companies didn't survive, since they seem to have killed a lot of their customers. As a cosmetic product, the FDA is not required by law to approve hair relaxers before they go on the market. However, earlier this year, the FDA announced that they are proposing a ban on relaxers with formaldehyde as an ingredient. The FDA is proposing that ban, okay? What about the manufacturers? Why do they need a ban? Can't they just stop? That's a rhetorical question. They can stop. They know what they're doing, but often without a stack of lawsuits or a government rule, companies just won't stop. A very similar product to the supplements mentioned in Johnny's video is the heartburn and ulcer medication Zantac. This drug was approved by the FDA way back in 1983, and it quickly became one of the best-selling medications in the industry. But that all came crashing down after a report in 2019 that there was a concerning amount of NDMA. You know, the contaminant that is a probable human carcinogen, aka it causes cancer, in the Zantac and in similar brands. Some tests found up to 9 times. 9 times? 9 times.
9 times.
9 times.
9 times the recommended maximum in the drug. The litigation in the Zantac cases is fairly new, so no settlements or trials have occurred yet, but you can see from this video alone how these product liability lawsuits tend to go. As for the FDA, they requested the removal of all Zantac products from the market in April of 2020. So, if the studies that Johnny Harris pointed out in his video are correct, and these unregulated supplements can have bacterial or fungal contamination, and they can have illegal drugs in them, what's an everyday citizen to do? Well, it depends. And I don't think this is gonna shock anyone. It starts with talking to a lawyer, as any great day does. Or at least that's what my wife says. Or at least that's what I've asked her to say. But seriously, the landscape for seeking a recovery if you've been victimized by one of these products is complicated. Actually, it can be more of a hellscape than a landscape. And it doesn't start with just talking to any lawyer. I'd estimate that no more than 5 to 10% of all attorneys have the knowledge and connections necessary to even get you pointed in the right direction if you're one of the millions of people who got on the wrong end of one or more of these terrible products. And there are many other products out there. I don't mean to limit it just to the ones that we've talked about. Because unlike a regular lawsuit where you say, you hurt me, I sue you, these claims, they're caught up in multi-district litigation and class action and other procedural tools that the courts have constructed for trying to handle the massive volume of claims that are generated by just one bad product. And to repeat, there are many. I'm not one of the lawyers who would personally handle claims like this, but I know very well the lawyers who do, and I'd be happy to connect victims of these products to the best lawyers. If you haven't noticed, in a lot of my videos, I flash a number to text me about your legal issues. This defective or faulty products, this is one of those legal issues. Oh, look, there it is now. How handy. I must have great editors. The amazing conveniences that modern life have brought us are not without their risk. The dangers, they're here to stay. There's always going to be a great new fantastic medicine or product that we're all going to find out like 20 years later is just killing us. Now, in his video, Johnny Harris expresses his disappointment with the government and their inability to regulate products that can and have caused very real harm to consumers.
Our government failed. We have a government to protect us against exactly these types of things. But instead, people are turning to Reddit to find answers.
Unfortunately, and you can call me an ambulance chaser if you want, but the only real way to get justice if you've been harmed by a product is to utilize the government and our judicial system. It's a twisted cycle, but many victims have gained life-changing money by exercising their right to sue. Johnny's video is doing a great job of educating millions of people, and hopefully my video reinforces his message to hundreds of people. No, to millions of people. Share this video with your friends. Don't forget to like and, what is that noise? Subscribe. Pelvic pro.
Sorry.
I struggle.